Hello, everybody. We're going to give it just one more minute to let people roll in, and then we'll get started. All right, I think we gave it an official minute mark.
Yeah.
So, hello and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today. I believe this is Sam Best Practices. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability and Flexera's ability to power your sustainable initiatives. So, with me today is the incomparable Mr. Mark Bradley, our product management innovation lab guru. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Good to
And
see
I'm Kevin
everyone.
Miller.
Glad you're all here.
Yeah, we
Go
are
ahead.
very glad you guys are here to talk to us about sustainability. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm with product marketing here at Flexera, and we're going to talk about these topics today. So, what's going on in the industry? What's our plan to tackle the challenges around sustainable IT and sustainability within your organization? Why should you be talking to Flexera about these things or leveraging, if you're current customers, your Flexera solutions? And then Mark's going to walk through a demo. We'll do some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. But additionally, as we walk through, we'll do a little bit of a presentation style to start this out, but then we'll additionally open up for questions throughout as well. So if you have anything that's burning, please drop it in the chat. So let's start out with what's going on right now with sustainable IT and the regulatory environment. And a big one is around why it's such a hot topic. And no pun intended, beyond that we're seeing physical effects in the news every day as we have records that, with heat and drought and so forth. Another reason it's becoming top of mind for many of our ITAM and FinOps practitioners is because we're going to need to start reporting on this monthly. And we are all going to need some sort of automation to do so. And so what are your colleagues reporting on now? Well, a simple way to understand it is that top right corner there. Those are two stickers that you may see. One, if you're in the US, that's that yellow one, and one's the white one you may see in the UK or EMEA or elsewhere. And they're telling you how efficient your technology is. Imagine these stickers on every server and device in your org, collected, normalized, enriched. That'd be pretty powerful. I've had to replace some appliances in my house. I know each one comes with one of these, and it lets me know how much energy or electricity my appliance is using, how efficiently it's using said energy. So it's not creating an abundance of climate-related emissions, your carbon, GHG, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as it goes. So if you're not read up on all the acronyms, don't worry, we're going to be here for you guys. So let's take a look at data centers and devices. Your servers, laptops, mobile phones, all the stuff service desks send out to the employees across the organization, and the infrastructure upon which IT runs. And I'm going to kind of walk through here down at the bottom, the bullets, desktops, all that carbon emissions needed to create a device. So footprint in manufacturing. And servers are all the energy used, your cooling, your heating, your electricity to maintain its usage. And then the business services apps are basically the software running on these services and driving that usage element. And this is a challenge that's classic, right, to most organizations. You can't locate what you've got, don't know how much power all the devices use. Finding that information is often difficult or time intensive. And most companies will look at some sort of generalization that either goes over or underestimates the impact of these. And so Flexera, of course, has data and market research around this, as you guys are likely aware, having been on these calls with us. Now let's move over a little bit to that cloud side. Here it's very dynamic. I'm not saying it's not dynamic in the data center and devices, absolutely is. But there are expanding services across multi-cloud environments. It's heavily usage-based, and it's also impacts hybrid environments where we think of the software that needs to run on top of the hardware used by those developers and developer instances, for example. The challenge here is that FinOps teams need to rely on cloud service providers, the CSP, for a huge portion of the emissions data. And that's what we'll call scope 3. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple slides. But as cloud teams consolidate and adjust their usage, they'll need to consider those hybrid impacts and also This information, again, isn't just sitting out there. It requires CSP reporting, so your cloud service provider.
You okay if I jump in?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Awesome. So this is a great slide, and we wanted to start it out just to get the chat going a little bit, see some questions and answers. First of all, are anyone in your organization, because of your role, because of your responsibility, anyone in your organization reaching out to you to say, can you give me your inventory so that we can calculate our company's sustainability? Just go ahead and put it in the chat there. That would be helpful. What we're finding is a couple things. If they're not, if you go to your company's website, if you scroll down to the bottom, chances are you have the word sustainability or ESG. And when you click on that, you're going to see that someone in your organization has already started to gather your carbon footprint. In the United States, we're not hearing a lot about it, but we see regulation coming. You're going to see in a slide coming up where the state of California is the first one to start the process, if you will. But chances are many of you and your companies are doing business in Europe. And as part of Europe, either through RFPs, RFIs, or just in general business, you're going to find that they're going to request this information from you. So that's why we thought today would be a great day to, one, let you know what Flexera is doing and how we can help you, and two, maybe address any kind of questions, concerns that might be coming your way. And then three, just arm you with some information so that you know what's happening. And then when the time comes, you get tapped on the shoulder. You've got a friend in the business to help you work through this. So with that, Kevin, back to you.
Oh, absolutely. That was a perfect segue. I was going to bring in Mark, kind of bridge us over to what we're talking about with regulations, right? So the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, and there will be a few acronyms in here as we go through, but we'll make sure to highlight. Essentially, that's looking at January 1st through July 6th of 2024. So that's creeping up because we're already at December 7th, where we're going to start to need to pull this data together to create reporting so that we know as an organization what is our carbon emission footprint. And there's other pieces in here, right? So environmental matters being that top one, what we're talking about today, but additionally social matters, how we treat our employees, human rights, anti-corruption and bribery, diversity on your company boards, et cetera. So there's other pieces that will be pulled into this reporting, but the main one that we're talking about today is around climate. And it's important because most organizations will have to do this. As you can see down there below, public interest companies with 500 employees or more. So there's opportunity here to get ahead of it, and it will be something that will be evolving in 2024 as reporting standards are defined. To that point, and what Mark just alluded to, it's also coming to the US, right? So we highlighted two here. These are two bills that just came up in California. One being organizations over an annual revenue of 1 billion will have to report on their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And then organizations over 500 million will have to report a climate-related financial risk report. So those two pieces are coming as well, and also require you to understand your IT's emissions footprint. That being said, Mark, is there anything else you wanted to add to this before we kind of look at the general around?
Yeah, no, this is beautiful. The other part, just as a heads up, the other part that we're seeing is as groups are and companies are pulling together that carbon footprint calculation, and what they're recognizing right away, and we've seen some additional statistics on it, they're going to see that your IT, your data centers, your cloud, some of you that have mainframes, you're going to fall in one of two categories. Like 20% of your total carbon footprint is going to be based on your IT assets. That's pretty significant. And so chances are what's going to happen is as your company addresses these requirements, your ESG group probably doesn't have a budget. It probably wasn't budgeted. It's just a group of people that got together and said, we have to address these government requirements. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a line item in your budget that said that money was used to buy the offsets for that carbon. And because you're 20% of it, you get 20% of that bill. That's the awareness that we wanted to bring. And because of these regulations that are happening, what we feel is we can help make you the hero in this situation, making you aware of what's happening in our industry and letting you get ahead of it so that when you have this information, you can start to make decisions and moves to potentially remove some of those devices. I like to equate it to an old sports car. You know, you tromp on the gas on an old sports car and clouds of smoke come out the back. You think about some of your older servers, devices still running, but when you throttle them up, running different jobs, and it cranks up that carbon footprint. That's all awareness. So hopefully this is what I'm trying to do is make that connection that says, okay, the government regulations are coming. They're pretty serious about it. They're going to put some serious fines behind it. And then two, getting you that early knowledge to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, because as you see here from the data from Forrester in their most recent report on the adoption of environmental sustainability metrics, regulatory is number one. It's that dark green across the top, and that is a huge push for most organizations because they know they're going to need to report on it, and we all are, in the near future. But additionally, it's also customer sentiment and perception of your brand, and especially as you see that in that dark box down there in North America. That's a big one here, and that's also something we're going to talk about as we talk about scope 3 and the vendors within your network. And additionally, I wouldn't discount the other ones that you see down there. You see some darker boxes in the 30s around customer demands overall, but additionally cost savings and financial benefits. That kind of leads to this next one where 88% of organizations with robust sustainability practices demonstrate better overall operational performance. And what does that mean? Saving on carbon saves you on costs. There is opportunity to reduce your costs by planning for the future. And so we're all here because we're talking about ITAM, right? And ITAM has overlap with FinOps, and that's an evolving state right now, right? Hybrid ITAM and FinOps is where we're looking at the evolution of IT. And all of these pieces are interconnected, as we know, whether it be on-premises, software running in the cloud, or software running on-premises, SaaS, cloud, et cetera. A lot of that consumption is driving emissions. And so we see it as most, as Mark just alluded to, most of the carbon emissions is also generated by IT assets. And we don't always know who's managing those, right? Because there's overlap. And this is a real-time opportunity for those teams to work together to help solve these issues and define who and where and how we measure these. Okay, I thought I jumped ahead a sec.
No, you're good.
We're gonna take a sec to talk about scope, right? So I said we defined some of these things, and I'm sure many of you on the call understand what these pieces are, but just so that we're on the same page of what exactly scope 1, 2, and 3 are. Scope 1 is all the pieces in place to help you manufacture or build your assets. You think about a server, where was that created? Where was it built? What was put into that, the energy consumption and the emissions created to build that server? And then scope 2 is, now that I've got that, I'm consuming, I'm using it. So what am I putting out there? What direct emissions are being created when I'm putting energy into it, electricity, or heating or cooling it in the facility? So all those pieces help create that scope 2 consumption emissions. And then additionally, there's a scope 3, and that's all the things around logistics. When I think about transportation, I'm moving that server to its final location, all the things related to supply chain in that process, those are all creating. And that also includes your network. I know, Mark, we've talked about this a little bit as it relates to vendors. I don't know if you want to add a little color around how that goes for the vendor network.
Yeah. So first of all, I like this graphic on the right. When you first see it, it's probably a little like, whoa, it's busy. But if you kind of follow to the left and you see the little factory with the smokestack, that clearly defines that scope 1. That's you doing your business and making things happen. And then that indirects that power. So it shows that little power plug. Those two, one's direct, one's indirect. And that's within your company's control. I think where everyone gets pulled in and we all become part of the discussion is when scope 3 kicks in. Either A, you're providing goods and services to your customers, and they're having to report their ESG, and they're coming to you to get your scope 3. So for instance, cloud. Let's say that say you have Amazon or AWS. In addition to your regular bill, that comes down and shows you, what you've provisioned and used in AWS, you can also ask for your carbon. And what they'll do is it's based on what's been provisioned for your work for your company. So they'll look at the full data center. They'll calculate that carbon footprint for the full data center, and then the percentage of your infrastructure in their data center gets allocated to you. And then that'll show up as part of your scope 3 because they're a cloud provider and it's you're using their services. And then from there, what you'll do is you'll look at that, and then that's what's been provisioned. But then what you actually use, that's where Flexera comes in. Flexera comes in to help you understand the utilization so that you can say, okay, yeah, that's what's provisioned, but here's what we actually used. And then from there, you can make adjustments, put in policies, do things that will help reduce that carbon footprint because now you have this baseline information. So these three things came from a group called Greenhouse Gases, GHG. They're the ones that kind of pioneered this concept. And then you're seeing more and more as the industry unfolds, we're adopting and adapting with these three.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads us in our next one, Science-Based Targets. This is another organization that's leading the way to a zero carbon economy, and they're helping organizations keep track of themselves, keep themselves in check. And this is another way to look at that through two different lenses, right? One is, as we try to tackle this, many organizations are trying to go toward a net zero standard. And so you may ask, what's a net zero standard? We bulleted it out on the slide, of course, but it's essentially trying to reduce in my production and in my processes within the organization the carbon that I'm creating. So that's your supply chain. We listed out a couple of examples here with business travel, product use, and this goes back to the Scope 3 conversation we were just talking about with Mark around your vendor network, right? You want to work with other organizations that are trying to go to a net zero standard. And in that process, especially in B2B, you may be cutting out some of the vendors that aren't going toward those same goals and opening up your network to more organizations that are going toward those goals. And then as we look at the other side of that, another way to go toward reducing carbon emissions is carbon neutral. And you probably heard this in various places, right? It's all over the media as well. Essentially, I've created a whole bunch of carbon, and now what am I going to do to make that right? And so we call it here good deeds to make up for the bad. And the example is I'm going to go plant some trees or a forest, create wind farms. But really, in most cases, I'm just going to pay the fine. And this doesn't include that Scope 3 because I'm not thinking about my vendor network and I'm not thinking about others who are trying to get down to net zero. I'm just thinking of ways to pay off what I've created at this point. But Mark, I don't know if you want to add any more color.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any baseball fans in the group, but when I look at net zero and I look at carbon neutral, I look at them the difference between a perfect game and a no-hitter. The perfect game would be net zero. You've done everything in your power to reduce your carbon emissions, and you're within the range that's acceptable, by the new regulations. Carbon neutral says, I'm sorry, I have to do my business. I fly planes. I know the planes are going to produce carbon. What can I do to offset that? And so carbon neutral says, I'm going to go and I'm going to make an investment so that we could plant more trees, create wind farms, pay some fines, do the offset so that it equals out from there. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. So again, net zero, perfect game, carbon neutral. You had some people that walked on base, but no one scored any runs. And so therefore it's a no-hitter. And then from there, there you go.
Right on, I like it. Yeah, corporate sustainability, right? This is good for the company itself. It's good for the world. Of course, it's good for your customers. As we look back couple slides with Forrester's research around customers. I mean, they are going to be a big push for why many organizations are putting these in place. So it's good for everybody.
And before you jump, on the lower right-hand side, I think we can share this link. For those that subscribe to ITAM Insights magazine, we did an article. The other challenge that you have is if your company is doing some great things, all is good. But if your company, for whatever reason, posts some aggressive net zero targets and not really doing anything about it, but just posting this, you have the fear of greenwashing. Companies, there's groups out there that are, quick to call other companies out on greenwashing. So this article below kind of talks about what you need to be thinking about, so that when you prepare your message for the public, you put it on your website. There's some guidance there to be aware of. Cool. Yeah, hopefully that helps there.
Absolutely. And so with that, in your own organization, it'd be great if you want to drop this in the Q&A. Who's leading the initiative at your company, or do you know, right? Is this something that's openly embraced? Is this something that's more on the legal side as we think about that scope 3 and the vendors that you work with? Where does it sit within your organization? And it can be many different roles, right? In this case, we highlight the big one, right? The Chief Sustainability Officer. This is somebody who's leading from the top. But it could come from various other portions. It could be a strategic initiative that's been, more bottoms up. So we put a lot of different roles that you might see. It might be more bespoke to your organization or industry as well. So something to think about as we move forward.
We're doing okay. And then, do you want to add just one more thing? If you go back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry about that. So these are the roles, but the other role that I need to add to this screen is procurement. Because procurement, as they're purchasing products and whatnot, procurement is very interested in carbon emissions and scope 3 type of information, because they're the ones that are going to have to gather that. Cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure we call.
I think that was great. Yeah, it was a great call out. Procurement's going to be a big portion of this as well. So now as we think about requirements and capabilities, some of the pieces that we're seeing across our own customers, as we're seeing also additionally across the industry, these are the required capabilities today. Of course, they're going to evolve, as we know. But it's essentially the reporting on the monthly carbon emissions from your on-premises and cloud infrastructure. And this can include time-phased trends. So where and how is that consumption peaking and maybe going to a valley, let's hope. Information that adheres to defined standards. So those are going to be further defined over this year and going forward as we think about the CSRD and others. Traceability of on-premises and cloud infrastructure components. So that's what I'm using and where and how, and then the recommendations that I have for reduction. So where can I then optimize my own estate in order to be more efficient and lower those emissions? And we call out here at the bottom just one of the measurements that is typically going to be used in these initiatives, and that's your monthly carbon emissions, or MTCO2e. That's the metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Is there anything I'm missing here, though? I know that this is evolving at breakneck speed. So, Mark, let us know if there's anything additional we didn't put on the slide.
No. This is, the other part to keep in mind is it's early days. There's a lot happening. The rules are unfolding as companies are trying to adopt and adapt. But this is a good baseline to get started, and then know that, as we always are in our field, is being flexible. And being able to address it. Absolutely.
So I think the biggest portion, and Jeff just asked this question, which I think is perfect. He just asked, Sam, best practices. I'm hearing nothing about software management, and that is a great question. This is all very much interrelated. So we're talking about sustainability because Sam and ITAM are very much drivers. And so I want to put this quote up from one of our customers. And that's the inevitable adoption of sustainability into ITAM. This is going to be a thing, whether it's today or whether it's in the next 6 months, especially in EMEA with regulation coming, whether it's in the next year or two, as we look at the United States and the regulations that are coming out of California and soon to be other states. Adding carbon footprint is going to change the way that we look at how we optimize our estates beyond savings, which savings is a huge portion, which we noted in the very start. So I know that the first 15 minutes were missed there, but essentially it was talking about reducing carbon also saves money. And so this changes the way that we look at how we strategically prioritize pieces of our estate to be more effective. And we're going to look at another slide in a second, but just before I move on from this quote, Mark, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, we're bringing it to your attention because it is coming, and you have a chance to be in the driver's seat. You have a chance to help drive these initiatives. We shared with you the roles within your company that are probably working on this. Our recommendation is you reach out to them, introduce yourself as the ITAM, and that you have all the hardware information that your company uses, both hardware and software. And then when they start to do the calculations for the company's carbon footprint, you're a big part of that. And by getting in there early, showing what you have a chance to make the adjustments, potentially getting budget in areas that you didn't have planned before because of these initiatives. And then when you look back on this day, you're going to say, they told us, and here it is. So hopefully this helps.
Absolutely. And we're going to just run through a couple here. Won't spend too much time except for just to show you where inside of Flexera you might see these types of things. And so across IT visibility, IT asset management, and FinOps, and in most cases, we're going to be right there in the middle, of course, with this group, but could also be in the IT visibility side. It's looking at this to be able to then take my assets and take my IT estate and look at that footprint and see where I need to monitor and analyze the emissions that I'm creating, right, or that my organization is creating. And it helps optimize those data centers where we talked about the efficient energy use and all the things that go into that do create emissions, as well as compliance and regulatory reporting is going to be a key piece in the very, very near future if it isn't already for your organization. So these are all pieces that span. And then to Mark's point, this is the opportunity to then look at the data specifically. So Mark, you mind walking through a little bit of the data points that we have on this slide?
Yeah, so this is information, chances are you already have this in your system, from using Flexera 1. But the end of life, the end of service, so that's a pretty important. So as you have older infrastructure in place that could be contributing to carbon, we have those dates, obviously. The hardware specifications, so as you're making buying decisions, and maybe there's two brands, two laptops that are pretty much the same, but one has a better carbon footprint than the other, know that making that decision, moving in that direction, could save in the long haul. And then because of those two key components, and with the ability to use our automated business service, so now that we can map, find your business service, and then we can share with you and calculate for you the carbon emissions for that particular business service. So being able to do that, and then the carbon footprint information, it's additional information that we've been collecting, gathering. We've been taking advantage of greenhouse gases calculations. And so again, just making yourself aware that as you're feeding all this information, we have these areas to help you in your Going Green initiatives. Jump to the next slide. All right. You want to take this, or do you want me?
And I was on mute, of course. Yeah, I think this is exactly what Mark was talking about, right? But now it's taking it and putting the contextualization of, I'm able to take that supplier data when I'm thinking about all of the emissions that relate to various devices, to various servers, et cetera, and then marry that directly with the data that you have in your own organization. And that helps us to be able to do more than just report. It helps us to be able to optimize based on the decisions that Mark was just talking about, right? Like, is one going to be more efficient than the other? Is going to help me reduce my footprint? That could also reduce the spend that I'm putting into that vendor or into that type of device. Additionally, reduces the risk to my organization because we think about end-of-life assets that also create a lot of emissions. If I'm getting those out or updating or patching, those pieces of my organization, that's an opportunity to reduce risk as well. And then as we think to the future, climate is going to be a huge focus for most organizations to some degree, right? We see those targets across every industry. And I'll hand it back to Mark.
All right. So this, I know you've seen this slide, and I thought we would revisit it and then obviously add it to your arsenal so that as you're describing internally how it works, how we gather this information. And so as you have a number of scanners in your environment today, and then when we gather that information, we can look at usage and risk, and then the resource itself, and then the various rules to understand, what the definitions are, the filtering, the normalization process, if you will, and then our ability to clean that data, categorize that data, and then enrich it. And then what we're talking about, you saw in that prior slide that had those green squares, this is part of that enrichment process. And then by having that enrichment process, now, if you want this kind of information, you'll see it in Flexera 1, but if you're thinking about putting it in your CMDB or other systems, maybe other ESG systems, there are bigger like Uber systems out there that are capturing across all three, environmental, social, and governance, and they're collecting that information, and then they're doing what they call disclosure statements. And those disclosure statements are the equivalent to that CSRD report, or in each country has a different requirement. Same data, but they just have different requirements and how they want to see it. So knowing that we have that information, we can feed it, and then getting the benefits of us continuously collecting and normalizing that data on the back end with SLAs and having it all automated, so that I feel that the other part about the whole sustainability is it's not like Y2K where it was a one-time event. Sustainability, I think, is going to be part of our day-to-day going forward. I think that when companies report their earnings, they're also going to be reporting their sustainability. It won't be just the carbon, it'll be the full ESG, but knowing that carbon is a big part of it, and your data centers and the equipment you have will have a big percentage in that discussion. So how does it work? How does it break it down? How does Flexera look at it, and how we can help you address it? Imagine you have a brand new laptop sitting on your desk. Could be a laptop, could be a desktop. The manufacturer itself, when they produce that device, you're looking at what they call scope 3. And so in a laptop, desktop, 85% of that lifetime of this device is the manufacturing. So that's getting the copper and the metal and the plastic and producing that device and then shipping it to you so it sits on your desk. And so that's where the 85% of scope 3. Scope 2, on the other hand, is the power that's being consumed to run that laptop. And so because this laptop is probably Energy Star compliant, like if you look at your laptop, you probably see a bunch of stickers on it that talk about energy, or the equivalent of what Kevin was showing with that yellow sticker that showed, here's how much power. So we look at it across 5 years. And so we can pretty much estimate the lifetime carbon of this device. And it makes sense. But servers, on the other hand, it's a little different. Servers have a different life's journey. And what they see here is the scope 3 is a smaller subset. And because this server is in a rack, in a data center, 24/7 by 365 times 5 years, and then each server has a different kind of throttle, if you will. And so when you look at things like max load, this could be your key business server and it's full throttle. And so you see the scope 3 is a small part of it. And then you're seeing the years of power that it's using and generating carbon. And then you have your average server, which might, you might run that a few times per month, running key jobs. And then the idle servers, maybe it's the development servers where they're doing development work, but they're not really running big jobs through it. But it's important to see this so you can kind of see it from this level. And then when you take it one step further and you look at the purple pie chart, what you're looking at here could be your company's total carbon footprint. This is a number that they're going to publish to to all the different governments that are requiring it. And we look at it two ways. If you're a manufacturing company, chances are 24% of it on average comes from IT. But if you're like a credit card company, maybe you're a software company solving an industry problem. Let's assume you're a MasterCard, Visa, you're financial, and a majority of your activities are based on servers. You're probably in the 76% of your company's carbon. And then if you double click on either one of these pie charts, to the right shows you the breakdown. Okay, maybe I have a mainframe, I have desktops, laptops, a lot of virtual machines. I'm also working with cloud providers. So then now I can kind of see this carbon makeup. And as you kind of build it out and look through it, that number goes on a graph. And on that graph, when you want to do what we talked about, carbon offsets, they look to this number. And then there's some sort of chart or graph that says, okay, if you pay X amount of dollars and go do this thing, build a wind farm, tree farm, etc., then that's your payoff to go carbon neutral. And so what we're saying is, hey, if we can give you your baseline today, now that you have your baseline, you can go after the carbon heavy hitters, get those out of the ecosystems, build the plans, and then now as we go forward and the rules and regulations begin to be more finite, you're in a good position to be able to address the needs, and you have a good firm grasp of what your estate looks like. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Yeah, I can't talk about the snow one.
I was going to say, I'm going to drop it in there for you guys, but if you want more specifics, just reference our press release. We're really excited about pending acquisition, and we expect it to expand opportunities for both our customers and partners once it closes, but we remain two separate companies until then, so we do not have the ability to answer questions about that. And then additionally, around FNMS enhancements, as we continue around those, stay tuned for future SAM webinars. We'll continue to talk about all the enhancements that we have with the product. Today, we wanted to really get into the meat of all the good things around ITAM's ability to then tackle sustainability, because January 1st it starts, and today is a little less than a month. We want to make sure you guys have the pieces in place, and that's why Mark's going to run a demo for you in about 30 seconds or less. Not the demo, in the next 30 seconds, to be able to walk you guys through how you can do that right now and talk about how that's, how to applicably or do that applicably within Flexera 1.
Cool. Good points. I think we covered this. Hopefully everyone was able to follow along. If there's questions, by all means, please post them away. Jeff, thanks for your questions. We appreciate it. All right. Let's see if the demo gods will let me present. All right. All right. Can you see my screen okay there, Kevin?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Cool. All right. So the way we look at it, what I'm showing you here is Flexera 1. And within Flexera 1, being able to gather your information. And this is the 30,000 foot view from the executive summary. And the way we look at it is you have your hardware information. So we know the manufacturers, the products, the device count, the virtual devices. And then over here, we have this total carbon footprint. And the idea is that you'll be able to drill into it. And then from drilling into it, what we've done is we've looked at all the different hardware manufacturers. We went and gathered the information and said, what did it take to produce that device for scopes 1, 2, and 3? And so what we're able to do is now show you scopes 1, 2, and 3. Not every vendor is, provides all that, but they do provide a total. So based on the total for that device, what I'm able to do is a category, subcategory. So I can show you that your workstations are producing this much carbon. Your notebooks, servers, hubs and switches, etc. And this tree map just kind of gives you visually as you're working through it. As we scroll down a little bit more, what we did was we broke it down by workstation, the manufacturer, and the model. And in this particular model, it, because you have 325 of those devices, this is the carbon for those devices. And so what this is going to help you do is you can kind of see the landscape. And then as you're working with different vendors, maybe, Dell, HP, depending on where you're at in your life cycle, it'll help you make some choices. The other part that we talked about is being able to marry up the sustainability information with life cycle. So within here, we have whether the products are end of sale, generally available, obsolete. So in this case, what you're looking at is like hubs and switches. The orange is telling us that that's end of life, and the red's telling us that these devices are they're obsolete, no longer supported, and this is how much carbon that they're producing. So the idea is by giving you this information, depending on projects, maybe you're doing some cloud migration, maybe you move one project ahead of another to help reduce carbon as one of the levers of decisions. What this one's showing you is kind of a breakdown, by desktops, laptops, hub switches, routers. You're seeing the scopes 1, 2, 3, and then the number of devices in that category. So you can kind of see again where your carbon looks like. And then we continue to just kind of enrich the data, looking at it from multiple views. Here's my desktops, here's my notebooks, here's my servers, how many products, different models, the number of devices. Of course, I can drill into any one of these and see what those devices are. And then also, because we have the lifecycle information, we're able to also call out the currency, both software and hardware. Again, more lifecycle. And as we get down, I provide more and more information like PUE, power user efficiency. So you'll see if you start to look at different reports, power user efficiency is one of the posted pieces of information that they're looking for. As you're looking at your devices, whether they're Energy Star compliant. And then as we cruise down a little bit more, I've got information about the kilowatts per year. So when we saw in that chart, that tells me how much power, and then how much carbon per year. And then continuing to just provide more rich information, energy efficiency, green certification, PUE, the scores. So there's a lot of information here. And the idea is that as we're gathering this, we have the core components. And then when it comes time to either A, feed an ESG system that your company invested in, or B, to help build out the disclosure statements. And they want the evidence. Because what will happen is it's more than just posting. There's going to be an audit process, and they're going to say, where's your evidence? And then what we're doing is we're helping you with the IT landscape and its evidence. And then as we cruise down, the last thing that we did is we added a report that says, heads up, as part of our gap fill process, we don't have the information for these, and you can easily schedule this report to come back to Flexera and use our gap fill process. So that, heads up, we have these new devices, it's not in your database yet. You send us that information, our content team does the research, and then the next time you see this report after they update it, the items come off this list. So that you have, again, the information so that you can continue to work through what you're having there. And then from a cloud perspective, I'll do that real quick. So the idea here is that you're looking across your state. You want to see your CO2. And within AWS, you can say, in addition to my cloud bill, I want my carbon bill. And then we're able to bring that bill in. And what you're seeing is by region, the different data centers, by month, this is across the bottom here, and then how much carbon, how much CO2. And then you can easily kind of see where things are at. And then we can build this report out to, drill in to see what that infrastructure looks like across the globe. So you can see based on those data centers, what your carbon footprint looks like. And you may find where there's more green efficiencies in different parts of the world that are better than others. and by shifting, data centers could be a big impact and savings on carbon. And then Microsoft, I believe, has done a really good job. Microsoft breaks it down and gives you that full scope 1, 2, and 3. They give you their average. In addition to the data centers, like you saw with AWS, they're also breaking it down by Microsoft 365. So as your company embraces that, and as Microsoft makes investments into green power, you get to take advantage of that and use that as part of your reporting in that scope 3 range. And then again, still being able to see it throughout the globe, as to what your carbon looks like from different data centers. And then they give you some additional granularity to help you fine tune where things are at. My favorite part on the information they provide is that scope 1, 2, and 3 per month. So you can kind of see where things are at. And so the areas that are within your control, you can kind of work towards to help reduce this. So that's the high level. Hopefully this is helpful. Obviously, want to learn more, want to dig into it. We're working with a number of customers as kind of early adopters to one, kick the tires on this with us, and then two, give us feedback and then help us understand how your companies are trying to address sustainability as it relates to ITAM. All right. See if there's any questions in the queue, and I will stop presenting here. All right. That is the demo. Thanks. Does the data update accordingly like the ARL library? Yes, it's exactly. So the content team that manages the ARL library, that manages our desktops, laptops, software, each time that we, in fact, I could share a screen here. Well, we have in our screen, I can show you the parts that didn't get recognized. And then based on what's not recognized, that's what our gap fill team works on. And there's an SLA that's wrapped around to turn that around and get that information. And then the beauty is, once we find that laptop information for you, you found this one laptop we didn't have, anyone else who uses Technopedia gets the benefit. So, and that's the beauty of Technopedia. I do it once, I put all the best information in there, I hit save. The next time you get your updates, you have that information if it matches your inventory.
Thank you, Mark,
all right,
walking us through all that.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to leave you guys with a quote here, and I think this kind of speaks to where we're going as an industry, but also as we're going as a world, right? The one who plants trees knowing that he or she will never sit in their shade has at least started to understand the meaning of life. And I know that might be a little heavy, but also as we think about how we want to optimize our own estates, so bringing it back here, there's opportunity for us to think about the future, right? And this is entirely where we're going when we think about our assets and their contribution to emissions, but also as we strategically prioritize things like what Mark was talking about, moving to the cloud or making updates to out-of-date software and hardware. It's all interrelated. And so this gives us another tool to help us do this effectively while also helping our various vendors, our various customers, and our overall ecosystem, to be more successful and more effective with our carbon emissions. So if there aren't any other questions, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. And feel free, we can wait on for another minute just in case. We've answered a lot of my notes throughout the process, but just in case there's any last minute ones. We hope this was helpful, and we hope that this gives you guys a little bit more perspective on how tangible these elements are and how we can use them in your own estate and how we can take direct action immediately, right? We don't need to wait for something to come down the road. This is right here, right now. And we have the opportunity to use the data that we currently have to be more effective toward those initiatives. And Mark, is there anything else you'd like to add before we get out of here?
No. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. Keep us posted. I know there's some additional topics you'd like for us to cover or get guest speakers to cover for us. So keep sending them our way. And as we continue to keep this series going, trying to get the things that you're looking for.
Exactly. So next month we'll get back to more SAM specific, but we hope today you guys could see how this fits within the SAM realm and how you guys can be more effective toward these initiatives as well, and really take the driver's seat and highlight in your own organizations. All right, thank you guys all for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and best of luck, and have a great day.
Thank you.